2,000 elite Hessian soldiers marched on a fort held by 400 men. Most of them never marched back. By autumn 1777, British forces had captured Philadelphia, the capital of the young United States. But controlling the city meant nothing without controlling the river beside it. The Delaware River was Philadelphia's lifeline to the sea. Americans had sunk massive underwater obstacles into the channel, specifically to block British supply ships. 2 American forts guarded those obstacles from land: Fort Mifflin on one side of the river, and Fort Mercer, near a settlement called Red Bank, on the other. Without control of the river, British forces occupying Philadelphia faced a genuine crisis. Supplies had to travel painfully slow overland routes, vulnerable to constant attack. General William Howe understood the problem clearly. Those 2 small American forts had to fall before Philadelphia could function as a secure British stronghold. Howe assigned the task to roughly 2,000 Hessian troops, professional German soldiers hired by the British Crown, considered among the finest infantry in the war. Command fell to Colonel Karl von Donop, an experienced and ambitious officer, eager to add a decisive personal victory to his already respected military record. Fort Mercer itself was modest by military standards. An earthen fortification manned by roughly 400 soldiers under the command of Colonel Christopher Greene. Greene, a cousin of General Nathanael Greene, commanded a mixed force that included Rhode Island regiments, among them soldiers of Black and Native American heritage. These Rhode Island units represented one of the most integrated fighting forces in the entire Continental Army, drawn together by necessity and shared purpose. A French engineer had recently redesigned the fort's defenses, reducing its perimeter to create a smaller, more defensible position with reinforced earthen walls. On October 22, 1777, von Donop's Hessian force began marching toward Red Bank, confident that their numbers alone would guarantee a swift victory. American scouts spotted the approaching Hessian column well in advance, giving Greene's defenders precious hours to prepare their positions for the coming assault. Greene made a critical tactical decision. Rather than defending the fort's full original perimeter, he concentrated his forces entirely within the newly reduced inner walls. This left the fort's outer, older walls appearing weak and lightly defended, a detail von Donop's scouts noticed and reported back with evident satisfaction. Late that afternoon, von Donop sent a formal demand for surrender, warning that no quarter would be given if his forces were required to storm the position. Greene's response was brief and unwavering. He would defend the fort to the last man. There would be no surrender offered on that October afternoon. Von Donop divided his force into 2 attacking columns, planning to strike the fort from separate directions simultaneously, overwhelming the defenders through coordinated pressure. Around 4 in the afternoon, Hessian troops advanced against the fort's outer, seemingly undefended walls, expecting to overrun the position with minimal resistance. They climbed over the outer walls easily, exactly as expected. What waited beyond those walls was not the fort's interior, but open, deadly, exposed ground. American defenders, concealed behind the fort's true inner wall, opened devastating concentrated musket fire directly into the now completely exposed Hessian formation. The trap worked exactly as Greene had designed it. Hessian soldiers, caught completely in the open, with nowhere to take cover, fell rapidly under relentless fire. American cannons, positioned with clear firing lines across the open ground, added devastating grapeshot to the already relentless wall of musket fire pouring outward. Hessian officers desperately tried to rally their soldiers forward, but the sheer volume of concentrated fire made any organized advance increasingly impossible to sustain. Simultaneously, the 2nd Hessian column struck the fort's opposite side, hoping the divided American defense would be too thin to hold against both assaults. Green's defenders, though badly outnumbered, moved with remarkable discipline between positions, concentrating fire wherever Hessian pressure grew most intense at any given moment. Neither Hessian column managed to breach the fort's true defenses. Both attacks stalled completely under fire from defenders who refused to break formation. Von Donop himself personally led a desperate final push toward the walls, attempting, through sheer force of will, to salvage momentum from a collapsing assault. He was struck down during that final charge, severely wounded and left lying exposed on the open ground his own soldiers could no longer safely reach. With their commander down and casualties mounting catastrophically, the remaining Hessian soldiers broke completely, retreating in disorder away from the fortification entirely. American defenders continued firing as Hessian soldiers fled, adding further casualties to an already devastating toll accumulated in barely 45 minutes of fighting. The entire engagement, from first assault to complete Hessian retreat, lasted less than an hour. The scale of the outcome felt almost impossible to comprehend. Hessian casualties numbered close to 400 killed, wounded, and captured, roughly a fifth of the entire attacking force, in exchange for minimal American losses. Among the wounded found on the field was von Donop himself, mortally injured and left behind by his retreating forces in the chaos of the withdrawal. Green reportedly visited von Donop personally as the Hessian colonel lay dying, a moment of unexpected dignity between two commanders on opposite sides of the conflict. Von Donop reportedly remarked before his death that he was dying a victim of his own ambition, a haunting acknowledgement of the overconfidence that led to disaster. British naval forces attempting to simultaneously support the assault from the river fared little better, with one warship running aground and eventually being destroyed. American gunners set the grounded vessel ablaze rather than risk its capture, adding a dramatic naval defeat to the already catastrophic Hessian losses that day. News of the victory spread rapidly throughout the colonies, arriving alongside equally dramatic news of a major American success further north at Saratoga. Together, these victories dramatically boosted American morale during an otherwise difficult autumn, offsetting the psychological damage of Philadelphia's earlier capture by British forces. In Philadelphia, British commanders faced an uncomfortable reality. Their elite Hessian troops had suffered one of the most lopsided defeats of the entire war. Despite the disaster at Red Bank, British forces remained determined to open the Delaware River. Their attention shifted toward the remaining fort across the water. Fort Mifflin endured weeks of relentless bombardment before finally falling in mid-November, giving British forces partial but costly control over the vital river channel. Fort Mercer itself was eventually abandoned weeks later, when a much larger British force approached by land, making the original position no longer defensible. Even in eventual withdrawal, the defenders left with their reputation firmly intact. The original battle itself remained an undeniable and celebrated American triumph. Congress formally recognized Greene's leadership, and the battle became widely celebrated as proof that determined, well-prepared defenders could overcome supposedly superior professional forces. The battle also stands as a significant, often overlooked moment in the story of integration within the Continental Army, given the diverse composition of Greene's defenders. Historians have increasingly highlighted this aspect of Red Bank in recent decades, recognizing the contributions of soldiers whose stories were long minimized or overlooked entirely. The site of Fort Mercer remains preserved today as a quiet riverside park, offering little visible hint of the intense violence that unfolded there in 1777.